being hands-on, and he was behind the scenes. So, but I hadn't got any video footage of him, because when I'd been buying heroin off him, it was early in the operation, and you don't wear a wire, or you don't wear a video early on until you can be trusted. So I thought, well, I need to get the footage, and there was pressure on me from above to get the video footage of this guy. So I tempted him out by phoning him up, because I knew he was really into clothes. So I got some fake Stone Island jackets from customs that they'd seized. They were great. You could phone up customs and say, have you got any hooky tobacco or fake clothes or anything I can have? And they just say, hey, there you go. So I had these Stone Island jackets, and he was keen to meet me, and we met in this car park near the inner ring road in Leicester. But the trouble is, he brought two of his mates with him, and these ripples had obviously gone round, and there was suspicion about, and they didn't know me. Now, the guy I knew, I'd known him for 6 months, and so he was fine, but these two were just looking at me. And one was saying, so how long have you known him then? How long? I said, I've known him for months, man. There's no problem. Anyway, then the guy I knew said, well, you just want to sell these clothes, or are you after something else? And what I'm thinking as an undercover cop is, I've only ever bought heroin off you. If I can buy crack off you, that's an extra 12 months in prison, because it's the two commodities. And that's just the way you start thinking. So I'm thinking, well, if you're carrying white, I'll have some white. So he gets out this enormous block of crack, like just massive, like bigger than a VHS thing, that he's just carrying around in the car. Anyway, sits in the driver's seat of the car and starts cutting me a little slither off for a £20 stone. But as he's doing that, his mate just suddenly pushes me up against this wall. It says, and starts fiddling with my clothes. And I'm not wearing James Bond tech. This isn't high-end stuff. This is the year, I think the year's 2001 or something. And he finds the lump behind my button, and the button is like a denim jacket metal button with a little hole drilled in. So once you found it and looking at it, and there's a little glint of a lens there, you're not really in any doubt what you've just found, especially if you happen to be looking for it. And he was just like, my God, he is as well. Man, he's heat. And so I'm thinking now, this is an isolated car park. There's literally no one around. And there's three gangsters here, one of which I know by reputation is a maniac. And
before you proceed, could you tell us what you know about him that made you conclude he was a maniac? Well,
he was well connected, part of what was considered a gang, regional gang.
Is there a name for that gang?
No, there was. They people don't necessarily go by a moniker, but they were just connected to Birmingham. I know he was connected to Birmingham Heads, Leicester, Nottingham, part of a clique, and I knew that he was violent. Always very polite to me, but I knew what his potential was. So this guy, he was way taller than me as well, and I knew at that moment that I was in really serious trouble, and the most likely outcome of this would be me being seriously hurt or murdered, because they wouldn't want that evidence against them. So now I have, you asked what it takes to be an undercover cop. Now there's some things that helps, and one thing that I have I used to have that used to be of great help was that if I'm in an adrenaline situation, I get a big adrenaline spike and I'm in danger, time seems to slow down for me, or it used to, so that I've had the feeling that I've all the time in the world to think, a real sort of calm clarity, which is a little bit at odds with the situation, you would imagine. So I just knew that I had to carefully think this through to get out. And my thoughts were, I just basically have to prevent him from telling him what he's found in order for me to escape during that period of doubt. And I have to do it in a very surprising way to set him up, to confuse him. So I basically just launched into it. Now, bearing in mind, I'm not an aggressive or sweary person generally, but I had to go at him in a threatening and abusive way. So I says, what the fuck are you doing picking at my clothes? It's not even my fucking jacket. I got this off Jackie this morning. So what the fuck are you on about? What are you picking at my clothes for? And repeat. And I gave him a constant stream. So it didn't give him any space. to tell his mate what he'd found. And he looked like shocked, like, wow, I wasn't expecting that reaction. And he had a hold of one of the jackets. So I took that slowly, folded it up really slowly, because if you're being stalked by wolves, if you run away from them, they'll soon chase you down. If you face up to them, you cause some doubt. So I just did it really slowly and put it in the plastic bag I'd got it in, and then I started walking away. And as I'm doing, I'm just giving constant abuse. What the fuck are you doing? The fuck are you doing anyway? And just like that, and just slowly walking. This big car park, and I'm still shouting, and I hear him shouting to his mate, saying, "Man, he's fucking 5-0. He's heat. I'm telling you, he's fucking 5-0." I remember thinking, you're not old enough to have seen a Y50. But still use the slang 5-0. But anyway, so I got about halfway, and then I hear this running behind me. I think, okay, I'm about halfway. If it's just one of them, if I swing round, try and get a punch in, and then leg it, I might just get to the exit of the car park. So I turn round, ready, but it's the one I know. And he says, "Oh, don't mind my mate, he's a dickhead." I says, "Yeah, he is a dickhead, picking at my clothes, and it's not even my jacket, the twat." And he says, "Don't you want your ting?" I'm thinking, you really want to sell me crack now? After that. So I said, yeah. So I gave him the 20 quid and all the exchanges in the middle of the camera, his sort of smiling face on the other side. And I put it in my pocket, and his mate is absolutely screaming at him, "For fuck's sake, he's heat." So he starts walking back, and then I carry on. And then, of course, he does manage to persuade him that he has actually found what he's just found, quite forcefully. So then I hear the engine revving and squeal of tyres. I think perhaps I shouldn't be dawdling now. And I sprinted. But I got to the edge of the car park. Now, I can just describe this. The car park went out into the sort of inner ring road bit. And then it led up to a roundabout. And you know how a dual carriageway in a city roundabout has metal railings to protect the pavement in a curve? I sprinted along the pavement, but the car was coming along the pavement after me. So I just got to the metal railing where there was no room for the car. And there must have been just 2 meters spare when I glanced behind. So then they bumped onto the roundabout, a couple of cars squealing that they stopped, and then they went round the roundabout slowly, and they came round again. But by that time, the way the geography was there, I was able to get away from them very quickly because I could get to a pedestrian area just beyond, I think it's just beyond a KFC or whatever. So I was away then. So I carried on walking. And then so I got back to what we call the safe location, the briefing spot and debrief spot. Got to the safe location and described what had happened, told them the number of the car, the description of the people. And the intel guy went away, did all his research. A few minutes later, he came back in the room laughing. He says, "Wow, I don't know why they just didn't shoot you." He says, "There's loads of intel that there's a gun in that car." So we laughed about that, but that's sort of cop humour, really.
So can you no longer, you're off that case now?
Oh, that was the end of that job, yeah. I mean, it was right at the end of it anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, that was pulled. And it's that, I shouldn't have been deployed that day, really.
So did those guys get raided and successfully prosecuted on your evidence?
Only the dealer that I knew, not the other two, not the one who found the camera.
Did you have to go undercover against anyone you knew had committed a murder or a gang that was involved in murder?
Yeah. Others, really. I mean, I suppose the next one, there's both the next one and the Burger Bar Boys, but the next one was in Nottinghamshire, the Bestwood Cartel.
Bestwood Cartel.
Yes. Run by Colin Gunn and his brother. But I've been advised not to mention his brother. So Colin Gunn. And that operation was interesting because what was going on in Nottingham at the time was there were daily shootings. It was an extraordinary time in the city, actually, because Colin Gunn and his group basically went to war with everybody else. They were at war with everyone. They were dominating the supply and just trying to get rid of the competition. Classic drug war, turf war, really, but driven by the ego of Colin Gunn. And it was so bad that the newspapers had it on the front pages all the time. I think my favourite headline at the time was Shottingham. But then I'm quite into puns. It's quite a good pun, don't you think? And it was even discussed that the failure of Nottinghamshire Constabulary to tackle it would mean that the Home Office would take over direct control of Nottinghamshire Constabulary. That's how bad it was. And all the cops were on overtime. There was literally shooting every day happening. Every day, just about every day. Yeah, it was extraordinary. Shootings, not necessarily have people dying or being maimed every day, but there were gunshots every day. So it was really tense, and that was the reason I was sent into that area, really, because it was needed to try and do something to infiltrate and find some intelligence. Now, my target wasn't necessarily Colin Gunn directly. That was a little bit above my low-level style of undercover work. But there was lots of pressure on me to get intelligence about what was going on. So I think the job just took over 6 months. I spent a long time getting to know people.
Where do you start?
Well, when you're working undercover, you need people to manipulate. And the easiest people to manipulate are vulnerable people. It's a brutal truth of undercover work, absolutely. But also vulnerable people, they tend to have the most connections because they're using more drugs than other people. So I picked on this one guy, Cammy. I picked on a few, but this particular guy was perfect for my purposes because he was a user dealer, so problematic heroin user, dealing bits as a runner, and he was on bail for dealing. But he was the lower end of that organisation, Gunn's organisation. That's where his drugs were coming from. So he was perfect. And I spent ages wooing him, really, just befriending him. And what I tend to call it nowadays when I look back is that I was weaponizing empathy, because I was all the time I was trying to learn about the people I was around, and that's how to be successful, to learn about the people. But
so when you say wooing him, you just walk up to him and approach him and say something.
Yeah.
How do you initiate that?
Well, I was presenting myself as a heroin consumer.
So you ask, where can I buy some smack?
That's always your opening line, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, it's got to be, because it's the normal conversation. It's quite normal to talk about heroin if you are really keen on heroin. So I'd say, look, I'm looking for bees. Are you looking for bees? And I look at his eyes and say, yeah, you're ready, aren't you? Because when you're rattling or you come down with heroin, your pupils are big, and if you've just had some, they're tiny. So it makes for an easy conversation. Like, are you ready to score? You're looking to score. I've only got 5 of you want to share a bag. Do you want to split one? And suddenly you're in the same kind of realm, and you can start talking about.
So they're checking your pupils out then.
Yeah.
And if you've not taken the drugs, how are you adapting that with your pupils?
Well, I bet my pupils look big now, despite that light, because adrenaline or PTSD or various things will make your pupils go bigger than normal, or LSD will, But heroin does the opposite. It makes it go small.
I've seen that, in prison.
Yeah. So I for the most part, I probably constantly looked like I was rattling, to be honest. It might have been one of my advantages. I don't know, but it's easy to make that kind of conversation as long as you know how to talk that way, and you learn to talk that way with empathy, and you learn from the people around you. So I got to know him quite well, and he was a really nice guy, Cammy, really, really nice. Like most problematic heroin users are, to be honest. He was clearly dealing with some kind of childhood trauma, like almost all problematic heroin users are. In fact, academic evidence says that 2/3 of problematic heroin users are self-medicating for some kind of childhood trauma, either physical, sexual abuse, or neglect. So he was clearly in that field. And I spent time with him. We went shoplifting together, actually, which is really good fun. Shoplifting, it really is, though, especially if there's two of you and you can take it in turns to be lookout. And I remember, actually, one of the things I got away with was, which was always a great challenge, is, in the real commodity to steal then, electronic commodity, was PlayStation memory cards. Now, people nowadays might not even remember what they are, know what they are, but they're basically a memory card which would give you extra memory for a PlayStation. And they'd be a real tradable commodity. But you went in Dixon's or Curry's, I think it was Curry's in where it was, they always had a little magnetic sticker on. So you'd have to distract the staff or take them somewhere else in the store to peel the sticker off. And sometimes they're really difficult, especially if you bite your nails like I do. So they're really difficult to peel off. But that was good fun because, there was a bit more effort involved. And in fact, once I peeled the magnetic sticker off and stuck it to a woman's back, which I know was a little bit mischievous of me. But I just got taken with the moment. But on
that subject, if you're an undercover cop and you steal something, at the end of the day, do you have to give it back?
Well, yes. Because, yes, eventually, yeah. Because theft, the definition of theft is to appropriate something with the intention of permanently depriving that person of it. My intention legally was never to permanently deprive them of it, because my intention would always be eventually that from the evidence, it would eventually go back to the store, plus any compensation if necessary for the fact that we had it so long. So it's all about the intent. So I could do it legally. Not so the poor people that I was with who, if they got caught, they were shafted, essentially.
So you've made an association with this guy at street level, and how do you expand it out from that?
Well, my intent was always to get him to introduce me to other people. So the conversations I would have with him were, the brown we were buying off Hoops or Daz or whoever. It's not bad, but I really fancy a better connect. Because if you've got someone who is dealing to the regional or local handful of street dealers, they're a step up, and the street dealers are going to skim it slightly. They'll make they'll make it go further, so a 10 wrap's slightly smaller. So there's value in wherever you are in the market. There's value in being further up the ladder, isn't it? You get better quality, better deals. So that's the way I would start talking. I could do with a better connect. What about this guy? You tell me about this guy. Would he be safe? Would it be all right to get introduced to? And that's how I'd get all my information about. He'd tell me the whole story about this guy, what happened to him, and actually this guy Stitz, as I call him in the book, who was the guy I wanted to get introduced to because he was close to gun. I remember Cammy telling me, "Oh, you ever guess what happened to Stitz yesterday? Because he actually really likes knifing people, and that's the reputation he had. He's really into slashing people with his knife. Everyone has to have Albie, but that was his. And but this got to be so problematic that apparently Colin Gunn snatched him off the street. This is one of his own dealers, lieutenant, snatched him off the street, took him to the middle of a field out of the city, made him strip naked, stuck a shotgun in his mouth, pulled the triggers back and said, "You need to stop being so handy with that blade." And he's like, okay. And that was the threat for drawing too much attention to himself. This is the man who's at war with everyone and shooting people, but apparently that was the tightener he gave him.
We have a quick question then before we get to Gun. You've made friends now with this low-level person, and you've gone out shoplifting, and you've scored your dope. Doesn't that person then want to see you take those drugs in front of them?
Well, that's always the challenge to not be doing that, because I never had to do heroin, never used it. That would scare the hell out of me, if I'm honest. But I would say that, I would talk about my habit being quite small. I would just be doing it mostly like in the evening. I would take tolerance breaks off, and people do that. It's quite reasonable, because believe it or not, only 25% of heroin use is problematic. We have this image of anyone who uses heroin is an addict. That's what the media puts out. That's what everyone understands it. The sort of one smoke and you're addicted for life idea. It's loads of bollocks, really. It's people who have a problem with emotional difficulties that have that problem. I mean, 90% of drug use is non-problematic. It's just that problematic heroin use is much higher than other drugs, but it's still only 25%. So I could talk in terms of, I'm taking a tolerance break, mate. I've been caning it a bit, or I'm only going to do it in the evening, or so that I could do that.